So, good evening to you all. I'm sure we can start now. If you can hear me, just give me a thumbs up or one person can unmute the mic and let me know whether all of you can hear me. Okay, okay. I've been hearing the pop up. Okay, thank you very much. So, sorry for keeping you waiting. Today, as usual, was a very busy day and I couldn't set up my devices very early. Okay, so let's just start the lesson today. Alright, so if you are meeting for the very first time, you are welcome. And I'm Sir Michael. I'll be your facilitator or tutor for this evening section. So last week we started by introducing ecology. So now, if you have been with us for at least since last week up till now, you've studied with us ecology, some definition of ecological terms. We've looked at up to a niche what the habitat is. So for the sake of time, we will not go through them again. But if there are any questions or there's a contribution that you want to add up to all that we have studied so far, you can bring it on board before we start today's lesson. In the next minute, I will start today's lesson. Alright, so the other time we reach here the food chain. So I told you that that will take a little bit of time. So and they are all related. So I can't just talk about food chain and leave food web and the autotroph and heterotroph there. So if there are no questions, then we are good to start a food chain. So last week we gave a brief definition of food chain and the food web. I will summarize all that you said, and if there are no other contributions, we will look at autotroph producers or and the heterotrophs. So we realize that the food chain is a linear feeding relationship in which organisms or energy flow from organisms in a linear order, whereby organism will feed on preceding ones and they will serve as food for the succeeding ones. So it's like A, B, C, and it goes through that channel. So A will be the producer, then from that A, the energy will move to B. So meaning B will feed on A, then B becomes the food for C, then C becomes food for D, then it continues to the end of the sequence. So it's like a sequential, a linear order of feeding. So here there are no interconnections. If A is being fed on by B, it is always A being the food for B. If C is feeding on B, it's always that way. So that is a linear, a simple relationship. And I told you that that does not actually exist in ecosystem or in nature, because as a human being as we are right now, even your supper that you ate comprise of food from different sources. We have animal source of food, you have the plant-based food that you ate. So if it was rice that you ate, the right or certified is there, at least there was onion inside, pepper will be there, tomato. So a lot of food organisms were put into just one meal. So it means that, and if you ate a rice as your supper, your breakfast might be porridge or something else. So we see that we are not limited to only one source of food. The lizard will not always feed on let me say a butterfly. Sometimes it can feed on a grasshopper, sometimes a cricket, sometimes a moth. So you see that the food that organism feed on changes, and that becomes the exact representation of a food web, whereby we have a lot of food chains coexisting together. That is a complex interconnected network of two or more food chains, whereby organism can feed on several other organisms and can also serve as food for other several organisms, unlike the food chain where the feeding is unidirectional. So it goes through just one direction that we could see. But in food where it can go in any direction that seems appropriate. So that was a brief emphasis we laid on the food web and the food chain. So in nature, food chains don't exist independently, because organisms don't feed on only one source of food. So what exists naturally is a food web. But in the course of a food web, depending on what the organism will feed on, we can get several food chains in the single food web. So that's what we talk about. Then remember I told you that now, where does the food come from? So the food is like Ghana. Money is a currency, meaning it moves like a current, it circulates around. Before we had a change of this, our new Ghanaian cedi in 2007, which I'm sure most of you were very young or some of you were not born, that we made the change of that denomination what happened was that the old Ghana cedi was there, and the government printed new copies of the Ghana cedis. So now what happened? None of us had that new currency. It was in the banks. Bank of Ghana gave it to the other banks and depositories. So you go there to withdraw your money. Then instead of giving you the old currency, they were now issuing the new ones. So when the old one gets to the bank, they will keep it. It will not come back again. Then over some years of spending both the currencies, they now decided to restrict us to the new currency. So now the old has been taken away completely, and now we are using the new. So who brought the new currency? It was the Bank of Ghana, now as at that time, led by President Adekum Kufuor. So the point is, someone has to bring the food or the substance into the ecosystem. So here, the Bank of Ghana printed several copies of the new currency and brought it to the Ghanaian economy. Then it was being circulated. So if I go to the bank to withdraw the money, I'll go and buy something, I'll pay for a service, I'll pay for a product, then the money will be circulating till it gets back to the bank, then the cycles continue. So there should be a producer or someone who brings the food into the ecosystem, and those that do that are called the producers. So they will synthesize food which is organic from inorganic substances. So last time we talked about the chemoautotroph, those that use chemicals to synthesize their own food, and we have the photoautotroph, those that will use sunlight, and that is a dominant producer that we have. Then realize that we don't have only chlorophyll, we have other plastid. So plastid, TID, are a group or a collection of photosynthetic pigment that can trap sunlight or sun energy for the organism to prepare its own food. So we have the xanthophyll, the phycoerythrin, phycobilins, phycocyanin, we have the carotenoids, and several of them. Which, and the main one that we know is the chlorophyll that most plants will have, and it has the color or the color to be greenish. So that is the autotroph, prepare their own food. And we have a sulfur bacteria that will use sulfur instead of sunlight to prepare its food, a chemical for food synthesis. So the autotroph will bring energy into the ecosystem. Now once they bring it, those that we can synthesize our food, we are called consumers. So, and the consumers, we have several of them. We have primary consumer, we have the secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, then quaternary, then it goes on in that way. So the primary consumer is the organism that will feed directly on the producer. So if a goat feeds on a plant, maybe a grass, maybe a maize plant, it is feeding on the producer directly. Such organisms are what we refer to as the primary consumer, and we know that they are called herbivore because they feed strictly on herbs. But as an omnivore, as human as we are, if I feed on a maize plant, I become a primary consumer. At that time, I am an omnivore feeding as a herbivore because I can feed on both carnivore, but over there, I am feeding on herbivore. But since I can feed on other organisms like the flesh, I'm called omnivores. So omnivores and herbivores can occupy the second trophic level. I told the other time that trophic level is a feeding level. So where are you getting your food? Are you the one creating or manufacturing the food? You are producer. The second trophic level is them that will feed directly on the producers. They are the primary consumer. Sorry, they are the primary consumer. Then we have the secondary consumer. They will take the third trophic level. Remember, the first is the producer, second is the first consumer, third is secondary consumer, tertiary, quaternary, and other levels will come as we continue. So that is a food chain. And when we have several of these put together, interrelating and having a feeding relationship, we call that a food web. So autotrophs are usually green plants or bacteria. So organisms that have the chlorophyll, then other pigments over there, they can make their own food. So it's either through photosynthesis, that is the photoautotroph, or through chemosynthesis, which is the that use the chemical for their food production. And remember, as I told you, producers begin the food chain. What I've just highlighted here. So producers will always begin the food chain, because if there is no food in over there, there could be no energy to be transferred. But later we will remember, we will learn something that will be informed too in our year 2, because we will not study all the ecology in year 1. We will learn something that we call a pyramid of numbers and pyramid of biomass. So you later realize that sometimes there could be an inverted of this plan, but just naturally a food chain there must be a producer or someone that will make the energy available in the ecosystem. Now heterotrophs, remember I told you auto means self, troph means feeding. So auto means self-feeding. You are making your own food from inorganic substances, then you create an organic substance as a food, organic compound. Now hetero means different. So hetero means feeding from different sources. So here you are not feeding on your own, but you are getting your food from a different organism. That makes you a heterotroph. And as I explained to you, we have the herbivores, carnivore, omnivores, and decomposers. So remember, herbivores, they feed on only plants. Carnivores will feed on other animals, their flesh, but that is only what they will feed on. The omnivores will feed directly on plants and also on the flesh of other organ. Now we have decomposers. Now remember, once that we have eaten, there will be waste. So the waste has to be taken over. So I remember, and sometimes it do happen depending on how large the family is. So I remember working sometimes maybe a parent or another person will go and buy food. The person will finish eating, then you give you some, then you also pass it on to maybe the last person. Now the last person will have to wash the bowl. So the decomposers, they form the last trophic level of a food chain or a food web. The point is now, as we are eating, waste will be released, organism will die. What must be done? We have to recycle them so that we will get minerals for the plant or nutrients for the plant, so that when they combine them with the photosynthetic products, they can grow. Then energy will be made available for us. So they clean so that they prevent the accumulation of waste and also make nutrients available for plants so that they can grow, make more food for us. Then the cycle continues. So that's the work of the core. So normally they are bacteria and fungi. They are saprophyte. As they are feeding, they feed or digest their food substances extracellularly. And when that happens, it causes a breakdown of the tissues. Then energy will be released back into the ecosystem. Now we talk about predators. And I remember I asked a question the other time about cats and the dog. Either they are carnivores or omnivores. So some were saying they are omnivores, some were saying they are carnivores. So we laid the rule and the foundation that naturally they are carnivores. Naturally they are carnivores. Later we will talk about, when we go to human anatomy and physiology or nutrition, we will talk about dentition, whereby we will see herbivore dentition, carnivore dentition, and omnivore dentition. Any organism that has carnassial teeth, in Ghana we will say symbol for that long teeth over there. Most of them, or no, not most, all of them are carnivores, and they have close fitting incisor. Their canines are very very sharp. So dog and cat, they are naturally carnivores, but because of domestication, we have forced them to eat the food that we do eat. That is why they do so. And I also give an example that sheep and goat, can they also eat meat? And I have not witnessed that personally, but some students that have been teaching almost every year, they confirm that they've seen the goats chewing dried fish, what we say the amani and the rest. So once in a while when they get it, they can feed on it. But remember, naturally they are not fresh flesh eaters, rather they feed on plants. But when given the chance, organism can adapt their feeding. So that's what we talk about. So this evening, let's look at, I think we will talk about all these things, but at least for those who are joining today, yeah, we talk about predators. I think we did that, and even competition. So now someone should come on board. Symbiosis, we didn't talk about that. So let me finish with this, then you can bring your question. Sorry, I think we talked about this the other time. So let me just run to, since we have said it already. So predators are organisms that hunt, kill, and feed on other organisms. So a predator can either feed on the entire organism or it can feed on a part of it. There's a type of predation that we call herbivory. That is when organisms feed on plants. So if you look at the definition for predator, it means that when we feed on one organism that hunt, kill, and feed on other organisms for food. So it means that if I'm using the plant for food, then that is predation. But naturally and ideally, there's a technical name. If you are feeding on herbs, we don't actually call it predation, but the specialized name is herbivory. So whenever you hear herbivory, it's when an organism feed or hunt for plants. Either you feed on the entire plant or part of it. It's a type of predation that we actually call herbivory. And we have animal predation. For that one, we all know. We also have plant animal predation. If you're hearing for the right time, we have plant animal predation, whereby a plant will feed on animal. So later you can search. If I've lost some of the videos, so it will be long for me to get on my device here for you, but if you are me in school, I will fix them up. So you can search on the internet. We call something insectivorous plants. We have some videos over there. You can watch them on the on YouTube or any network or search engine I want to search. So we have insectivorous plants. Example is a pitcher plant, the Drosera species, and the rest. They will feed on insect. So when the insect and the Venus flytrap, you can sec them. So once the organism step on them, either it will be a sticky substance or the pitcher plant covers itself, and the very fly trap has a sticky substance, then has some spines over there which will kill the organism. So those are plants that lack proteins and amino acids in the desert most often. Then they feed on other animals such as the insect to get the supplementation of the protein. So that is predation. So when an organism feed on the other, the one feeding or hunting for the other organism is called the predator, and the one being fed upon or being hunted is the prey. So that is a relationship that we have between. So these are biotic factors, because human beings, some say organisms, are doing that. Then we talk about competition, whereby is the struggle for limited resources, whereby organisms struggle for limited resources. And we have two main types, which are the interspecific. Inter means between, so different species of organism. If a cat is competing with a dog in the house for food, that is interspecific. But when a group of cats, they are struggling for food, or maybe a flock of sheep trying to get a greener pasture, so they are striving for it, that is the same species of animals. It's called intraspecific competition. So these are two types. When human beings are competing with animals for a source of water, normally in the rural areas where they don't have they use only streams and ponds, that is also an inter-specific competition. So once the species are different, we call it inter-specific competition. Then we will look at symbiosis. It's something that we haven't talked about. I am just taking time to explain these things. Ideally we will study them in year 2, but at least I can't just show it to you and leave it there. I want to spike your interest. I'm sure others will go and do better read, so that once we get to year 2, you will know most of these things. At first we used to treat it continuously, and that was in form 2, but now based on the new curriculum, we are trying to study most of the things in form, and then later we build them up as we progress. So now if there's any questions from what we have talked about, let me show to you all that we have talked about so far. So if you have a question on any of them, you bring it, then I will start the symbiosis. So as you can see from my screen, these are the terms that we've talked about, and I've shared the material with you. So you can go to the Google Classroom platform, it will always be there, or on WhatsApp. If you joined before last week, you will have it. If you don't have, you can request from any friend or myself. I'll share it later. I don't want to flout the page with a lot of documents. That's why I don't send it regularly. Alright, if there's a question I'm waiting, you can ask, or I'll start the symbiosis. I'll just explain them. Remember, if I'm teaching any of these, a clinical session is just like one period lesson. So I'm using just 5 minutes to explain to you, and I'll address some questions. That will not take much of our time, because later we will do an in-depth studies of all these themes. Alright, since there are no questions, let me talk about symbiosis. So a brief explanation of symbiosis. So symbiosis is an association that living organisms do, and most of the time the reason they do is for them to survive in terms of feeding. So we will say it's a close, prolonged, some will say long-lasting relationship between organisms of different species. Remember, it's organisms of different species. Sometimes it could be close enough that one organism will live in the body of the other. or on the body of another. That is how close it is. They become like partner for life. So it's a close, prolonged, not just one day, prolonged. So sometimes the body of one organism become the habitat for the other, and it should be organism of different species, and there are some benefit. So we have based on the direction of the benefit. When both of us are enjoying, we call it mutualism. So mutual fund. Other teachers, any company, when they do a mutual fund or old mutual fund, they try to benefit. So you make a contribution, you get what's called returns or interest out of it. Then sometimes you can do some cash out, and based on the terms, at least we are doing that to help all of us. So we put the money together, they'll invest it, then later on we can withdraw when they go on pension or anytime we deem fit to withdraw. So that is mutualism, whereby both organisms will enjoy. I'll give you one or two examples. We call something like lichens, lichens between bacteria and fungi. That's why wherever you see there are termite there, so termite, termitarium or mound, you normally see that we have mushroom there. So that is the association, because fungi is a mushroom is a fungi. So association between them. What happens is that the bacteria will break down these organic materials or dead organism to bring nutrients. When the nutrients are there, the fungi also enjoy, and they also get a lot of this. So these are the benefits that both of them they do. On the bacteria will break down, and they can also serve as a habitat for the bacteria. Now the mushroom become like a tree for them. They also enjoy, and they form a nice community over there. So that is one. Then you have something that we call a flagellate. A flagellate stays in the intestines of termite, so it's called trichonympha. So this flagellate inside the intestine of the how do you call it, the termite. One thing is that they feed on trees, and trees have a cell wall made up of cellulose, and it's very hard and chitinous. So before they can digest it, what they need is they must get something that we call an enzyme called cellulase. The termite lack that in their system. So what happens is that they will need the flagellate trichonympha in its body to issue what we refer to as the cellulase, that is the enzyme. Once it releases that enzyme, it will be able to digest it. Now it will get the nutrients from the food that it fed on, and the trichonympha will also enjoy food because it cannot chew the plant, but it will get the end product, glucose. It also has a full apartment, a whole flat or estate in the body of the termite. That is one. Also, there are also enzymes, bacteria in the body of what do you call it, the ruminant. It also releases cellulase, try to digest them for them. That is example of mutualistic. Then we have a crab that we call hermit crab, and also what do you call it, the hermit crab, and another organ, a sea animal. So the sea animal will live on the body of the hermit crab. It will enjoy free ride, free transportation. It will get food from the crabs, its debris. Now the crab will also get protection from the hermit crab, because sorry, the sea animal, it makes it look a little bit odd and very let me say very scary, and it also has some poisonous things that it drives a predator away. So these are examples of them. We have a lot of them that we can mention about. So that is mutualism. Then we have commensalism. That is when only one organism enjoys the benefit. So example is that we have the shark and remora fish. The shark is very large fish, as we all know, and the remora fish, they are very small fishes. So they will be living around the body of the the shark. Now, since they are there, no organism can try to come and feed on it. And it's too small that the shark will not feed on it. So it's not a food for the shark because it is too small. And other bigger organisms that can feed on the remora fish too, when they try to attack the remora fish, they will end up being chased by the shark. So they get protection. Now they also get enough food from the shark, from its debris, so they will get protection and food. We also have a sea barnacle or the sea cucumber and some tropical fishes. These organisms, they can attach themselves to the barnacle, and others tropical fish can also enter the cloaca of the sea cucumber. So they get protection, they get free ride, they have a full apartment over there. These are examples of them. So one organism will benefit, the other doesn't benefit, and it is not harmed. So I will not be harmed. I don't get any benefit, but the other one will get the benefit, and we call that commensalism. Then we have the last one called parasitism, whereby only one will benefit, and the benefit is at the expense of the other. That's why we have parasites. And this one, I will allow you to bring a lot of the example because it's something that we had before. Example of parasitic relationship. So you can mention any parasite that you know, any pathogen that you know, and its host. It could be a pest, the pest and its host. So that could be a parasitic. And we have plant parasite and animal parasite, which we will study in-depthly, God will next year. But you can at least read around. But for now, we will not ask questions here in this our studies. But when we get there, I think yeah, later on we will study them. So this is just an intro. Yes, later we will study them. I think I remember it will be this year. Okay, so for now, this is just an intro that I am giving to you. So if there's any question you can ask, there will be a day that we will set aside for all of these things. So that is symbiosis. If you have a question, you can raise up your hand. If your hand is up to you, can talk, since I'm not looking at the charts. Yeah, we will not talk about this, but at least I've given you an in-depth knowledge more than this introduction requires. Alright, so we call something succession. It's also a full topic that can take a day or two. So let me just compress everything into a 5 minutes explanation, which I'm sure when you listen quietly you understand. Okay, let me talk about biodiversity. At this point, I will invite someone to come. At least I've been talking for the first 10 minutes or so. I want someone. We have it on the screen. So come and explain what biodiversity or what you understand by biodiversity. So anyone that is ready, or mute your microphone. You can refer to my screen. No hard deal over there. It's the understanding that I want to see whether you have got the understand. So biodiversity, point 19 on my screen. You can refer to that, or you can just tell me what you remember. I'm waiting for a hand to come up. Biodiversity. What does it mean to you? Any light that you want to throw on it? Oh, who is speaking it? Oh, you're all not online. Yes, one person. Normally, I don't want to mention names. You might not be closer to your device, or maybe you're in a notice. So if I call you and don't respond, people might have the idea that you are not willing to talk. But so as I want people who are just willing and having a very quiet environment, you show up your hand, then I will call you. Then you talk. You share your idea with us. All right. Let me just continue for the sake of time. Okay, Amna, you are welcome. So we call something biodiversity. Bio over there means living. For that one, everyone knows as a biology student. Now, diversity means diverse, which means it's a lot of things, a whole spectrum, a lot of things that are different. So diverse means different or many. So bio means like life, many life. So that means that whereby we have different types of organism living in a community. So by the way, talks about how organisms are varied. So you go to a place, it's not only grass, but we have different variety of organism there. You go to a place, all that you see is sheep and goats. That is all. You don't see any other animal. That environment or that farm is not biologically diverse. But you go to a natural scenery whereby you have a bit of everything. Plant, several types of plant, animals, several types of them, they become biodiversity. Remember, there were some plants that we used to have. Now you will not see some plants in the urban centers, but when you go to rural areas, you will find them there. Sometimes you need a herb, a plant, a bag of a plant to do some herbal medicine. You might roam through the whole of Kumasi, you will not get some, or Accra, wherever you are. But when you go to a suburb of that your town, you will get some of these plants. Why? There are some animals, hardly I'm sure some of you have never even seen them. Unless you're on the highway, then you see others selling such animals along the stretch. But when you are in the rural areas, you normally see such animals. Why? Because over there, the environment is so serene that we have the organism, their natural habitat has not been threatened. They can live over there. So that's called biodiversity. It refers to the variety and the variability. So meaning we have a lot of them, different types. If you're looking for this animal, we can get it over there, and that refers to us the biodiversity. So we have variable organisms that are shown in a particular environment. Sorry, let me enlarge it. I wanted to do something. All right. So it refers to the variety and variability of life on Earth. So when you go to an environment, we should have a variable organisms over there. But now, due to human influence on the environment and pollution, and also commercialization, most organisms have been disposed of their natural habitat. We have been killing them, they've been threatened. Now, ecological succession. When we say succession, meaning succeeding, so one organism is trying to replace another. If we say someone succeed you, it means that the person will now inherit you, either your throne or something that you left behind, someone that takes after you. That is succession. So in the ecology or in the environment, it goes through series of succession. Let me give this to you. So for instance, maybe you had a plot of land, you grade it, so you see that it becomes so flat. Now what happens is that there are no grass, no plants on it. If we leave it bare for some time, in the next year or so, you'll be seeing some small bushes like shrub, what we call the champon or the chromolina odorata. Sorry. So chromolina odorata, we see a lot of these, what we call a champon here, a lot of them there, and some shrubs and some. You will not see trees over there. They will start. Normally it will be that plant. So you see that over there they'll be covering the place, then late and cedar akita, what we call trita in Ghana here. You see the trita, cedar akita, and the Chromolina odorata, a lot of them will be around. Later in time, you see that you don't see them. The Chromolina odorata will become larger, sometimes they become as big as a plant. Then you when you go down there, you don't see any shrubs or any plant over there. If it stayed there for some years, now trees will be coming out. Let me bring this. The first day that they brought a heap of sand in your area, you see that nothing was on it. Later you'll be seeing grass and some small let me call it a plant. A point will come, larger plants will be on the sand. Later, if you stay there for more than 5 years going up, you might see some plants or maybe larger plants coming over. When they move blocks and put it there, what happens? You will see spirogyra, what we just learned, on the block. Later on, you will see moss, what looks like a carpet grass. At point in time, you will see some small plants growing on it. That is called succession. Now, normally on a bare land where normally people do work, most especially I do see that on, how do you call it, a hill, or when we are climbing a hill, you see that where people normally pass. When it rains and they're going to farm around an area, you will see that you see a mushroom. The place will be a little bit whitish. That is when fungi and bacteria they come around that area. A point in time you will see, over time, if people don't walk there, you will see small plants growing over there. A time will come, if you stop walking through that lane, you see that the grass, normally on some school fields, people do walk there, you see the footpath. But when they stop walking there, even your farm, the road that leads to your farm, if you stop going there for a year or some months, you will see that that place will now be covered by a plant. That is called ecological succession. So it's a series of channels or generations whereby organisms will occupy a particular place of land. So it success. The environment to be a little bit conducive for some organism. Later on, it becomes conducive for others, which will now come and take control. Let me give an example. For instance, in an area, the guys may understand me much. I remember I had this encounter when we were kids, where we were staying. One man told us, okay, case you can read this place, clear the place, then you can start playing football around. So we were very happy. We did that. It was just behind our house. So we did that and we're playing football. A time came that after we have played the ball and now that place not bushy again, we were asked not to be playing football again. Why? Because we when we play the ball hit the house and we are just dirtying the thing. So I'm sure this man, the actual plan was for him was not for us to play the football. But as we are playing the football, what happens? The land will become bare, then at least they will not be weeding every now and then. So for instance, if the man was supposed to leave us, it will be case that will be playing football around that area. When the place become very very nice, what will happen that adults will be coming. Now when the adults come, the teenagers come, they will take the lad, the small boys away, that the infants away. Now if you can build as a football pitch whereby we can have posts over there, then we can have what we call it these ultra modern astroturfs over there. I'm sure it will not be the teenagers again. It will be a Premier League team over there, or even a national team or a district team, whereby the kids that started the actual team, they will not get a chance to play football there. The teenagers that came and took over from the kids will not play over. Now it has been fenced and astroturf, so you will not be allowed to play any kind of ball. It will be for Premier League matches and maybe some other important matches in the town. So you see how it went through. Kids that were it, now later it became so attractive to the teenagers. They came and they sang the case. Now the DC, or let me say the people over there, has had to make it as an astroturf. Now it has become so conducive that the teenagers cannot handle it. It becomes a district or a national asset. That is how organism go through. Normally we call organism opportunist. That is the lichens and the bacteria which I talked to you about. They can thrive on almost everywhere. Sometimes you can see some rock, the metamorphic rock, the one normally we put on campus and we use this white paint to paint it. That kind of what I'm talking about. You see that when it rains, you will see some packet of soil in some crevices. You will see some small plant trying to come up. Sometimes it will die. Sometimes even maize can grow there. They will not stay long. Upon time, you will see that plants are growing. When we are having a lot of soil debris over there, then organism cannot be growing on it. So sometimes you will see a whole rock. When you go to a mountainous area, then we have grasses inside the rocks. Even in your pavement, what happens in that small crevices? Remember those crevices, there were plaster or concrete over there, but with time they break down and dust will be there. You will see grasses growing even on your pavement. It took some time and it become favorable. If we leave that place rampant, even over there, crops can also grow over there. So that's succession. So we have primary succession. That means the land is bare, no life has existed on it. So how do we get primary succession? Whenever there's a sand dune, so sand dune means that the wind will blow sand. Normally having in the desert area, then the sand will cover another place. Like going to bring sand from a place, then you heap it there. That one is natural. They call something what we call volcanic eruption. So a new rock will be formed and become a new land. Then later it will breaking down, it will form these soil debris. Then organic can grow there. Or it can also be whenever the sea moves or a pond dries, the land becomes new because naturally it wasn't exposed from by nature, but human activity dried out the pond. Now if it is taken off, the land becomes primary section. Then we have secondary. Secondary is a land that was previously occupied by plant and animal life that has later been plowed, been destroyed by rains or destroyed by sand, sorry, by fire or anything. So meaning life was existing there, like someone grading the land, a secondary succession, and that is faster than primary because soil is there already, nutrients are there. But in the primary succession, remember only lichens can stay there. They are called the pioneers or opportunists because they can live on harsh environmental conditions. As they break things down, they can also weather the rock and soil will be there. Then spider will come, moss will come, then smaller plant animals will be changing. We call that ecological succession. And remember, as plants life are changing, animal life will also change. Because if it is a grassland. I'm sure elephant cannot stay there. When it become a forest, that's where the larger wildlife can be found. Now there's a point here, ecological footprint. So there's a measure of the total area of land and water needed to support an individual's or population lifestyle. So this talks about the basic needs of the land and water that we will need to survive an organism. We call something carrying capacity. That is the total number of organisms a community or environment can hold. So if 20 students have to be there and you put 80 there, there will be starvation, there will be competition, and it will affect them. That's called ecological food. So this includes the food that they need and the waste that they are also bringing out. So this look just like the carrying capacity. That will tell us that the maximum that we can have here, it shouldn't be more than that. If it is less, they enjoy. But when it's reached that point, you shouldn't go beyond that. It will affect the organism's life. Then carbon footprint. That was about the carbon cycle or the greenhouse gases that we are releasing. When we have a lot of these gases, it affects us. So we need to be recycling them. If you have enough trees, they will pick up the carbon in carbon dioxide form, then they will bring out oxygen. So that is whereby industrialization will release a lot of this carbon. When we have it a lot, it can cause global warming, then greenhouse effect, and so greenhouse effect, then global warming, and it will affect the organisms in it even affect the pattern of rainfall and the climatic conditions. So that is the carbon footprint. Now conservation, that refers to the effective utilization, some will say the wise use. So wherever we are using some materials or resources wisely, we call that one conservation. So it's the effective use or the wise use of materials or resources in the environment to ensure the continual use or the continual supply of them. So you don't waste it, you try to manage, use it wisely. We call that conservation, or some can say preservation, but here the actual word is conserve. You are, although you are using it, but using it wisely, economically, so that we don't waste it. That is called conservation. So that future generations can also have a look of that. So the way we are mining and saying, sometimes we don't know what will be left for the future generation. So we should mine though, but it should be wisely, so that we don't end up destroying the same environment that keeps us and feeds us. That is called conservation, wise use of things. Now we are done with the terms. If there are any questions, you can come on board and ask. If you have enough time, we will look at some ecological habitats. We can't finish all today, but at least we'll run through a lot of them. So we talk about all the ecological terms, and I've gone deeper to explain some terms and subtopics that we will study, God willing, next year in year 2. At this point in time, you can ask your questions, raise up your hand, you have a question, I'll invite you to ask. So please, today you have not, none of you have talked, so I'll be happier if you can talk in the next section that we are about to enter. Okay, right there, your hand is up. You can ask your question or your contribution. Okay, all depends on you, but I think you just reach species. I think the succession, yes, you can bring them there, but I will not penalize you if you don't get a place to put them. At least you should bring them out to this point. Uh, the heterotrophs, at least you should get up to the niche. So either you can start from point one here, ecosystem, biosphere, abiotic, biotic, community. At least you should get 10 of them. But I'll be happy if you can find a way to add food chain. I'm sure last year, the first year, some did marvelously well, some also deviated, but I'm sure I've given you a lot of insight, so you can do it and do it well. So all these steps you can include them, but if you find it difficult, at least the first 10 should be there. So it's an assignment. The way you do it will tell us how the amount of marks that I'm supposed to give you, but at least I should get 10, because it will be about 10 marks or so. So if you have less than 10, it means that you are not getting a perfect score. If you can get more than that, that is a plus for you. So rather do as many as you can, right? At least it should be 10 concepts. and you can make it any way. Yeah, thank you very much for the question. So please, as I told you, I'll be taking it when school resumes. So please inform your friends, those who are not on the live and those who don't join any of our meetings online. All right, any other question? Then I can start the next section. Any other question, you can come on board. All right, there are no questions, so let me continue. So now we are looking at ecological concept in some major habitat. Remember, we refer to habitat that is a natural dwelling place of an organism where organism can thrive successfully or live successfully. So we have the three main. Normally we can say two main, but at least we have three. That is the one those that live on land, that is the terrestrial. We have those that live in the waters, that is the aquatic. Then some that live most of their time in the air, they are called the aerial, or those that live on trees, that is called the arboreal. So it's two main, but sometimes we add those that live in the air because some do spend most of their time in the air. Those are the birds, the eagles, but at least once in a while they will land on a land or a tree. So let's look at the grassland. Grassland is an example of a terrestrial habitat, but it is on its own. So this is a habitat. And remember, grassland meaning grass. So I'll just look at some key points and I just move on. Most of these things you read, you understand. So grassland, whether savannas, steppes or prairies, they support a diverse range of plant and animal species that are adapted to grassy areas. So you see that all of these areas, we have a lot of grass over there, and the somebody we call them that's the savanna zone. So they look, yeah, whether they are savannas or any of them, we see that, and because of that, organism that graze will be mostly found there. That's why in the northern area that have the little grasses, they have a lot of these animals that they rear because they have enough grass to feed them. So the grazing changes or dynamics of animals will play a role in controlling the grass population, because when they overgraze, something happens. We can cause desertification, whereby the land will be bare because they feed a lot on those plants and they can't do well. And this is a term that I told you about, herbivory. That is whereby organisms feed on herbs or plants. That is a type of predation whereby organisms feed on plants and their part. It's called herbivory. And grassland are either often revived by either natural or human induced fires. So they are either maintained and revived by natural or human induced fires. So normally when a place gets burnt, what happens is that it is going through a cycle that we call secondary succession. And grasses, they are very, very dominant. So normally they will occupy it. So whenever anyone burns a land, maybe it was a forest, you cut the trees, you burn it. What will come out first is grass. Later, the Chromolina odorata will take charge, and if it lays bare for several years, other plants and shrubs will continue the succession. So that is a grassland, nothing much over there. And this will help to maintain ecosystem by preventing invasion of tree species. So that is when you say invasion, whereby new organism will come in over there. So the grasses will start it over there, but when they stay there for long, other trees or plants can take charge of the succession. Now we know desert, so some of you know types of them. So desert has a lot of harsh conditions. So we have a lot of extreme condition over there, scarcity of water, intense heat and cold, and also organisms have to adapt so that they will not lose much water for them not to be able to stay in such harsh environment. So plants that live in such are called xerophytes. So xerophytes are desert plants, that is plants that can thrive in harsh conditions. They are called xerophyte. Remember I told you that phyte and phyta, phyto refers to plant. So example is the cacti plant. They are very succulent. So inside them, I think we have some in the lab. Some of you were last time asking, so you can search online cactus plant. It's also called opuntia. Okay, opuntia looks like it, but it's different from the cactus plant. That's the delonely something something. So we have that tree that sometimes when we're kids you take it and you write your name on. That is the opuntia. it looks like, how we call it, like a mummy or a toy. Then it has some spikes or spines around it which can break you when you touch it. So that's a cactus plant. You can search for it, then later you appreciate what I'm telling you. So they are very succulent, and they have a very waxy cell wall, and that prevent enough water from being lost. So that's the way they try to. And desert plant also have small leaves which prevent them from losing a lot of water through evaporation. So that's what we have here. So they lose water by transpiration, and so that they can have enough water. So they have, okay, very good. In the freshest stem, their spines are reduced. So sorry, their leaves are reduced to spines so that they don't lose a lot of water through transpiration. So that's adaptation of organisms over there. So keep this stem xerophyte. They are desert plants, plants that can thrive in harsh conditions. And we have halophyte. Halo talks about salt. So again, that can thrive in harsher salt condition or high salt conditions. They are called halophyte. When we say halophile, that will be animals. So that's animals that can thrive in salty areas, whether water or the land. Then we can talk about forest, which you know, forest is like the direct opposite of desert. So here we have enough trees, at least water is abundant, it rains over there, and we have a lot of plants that will be around. So the organisms will live naturally in such a conditioned environment. So we have variety of plant and animals, microorganisms that will be there. So here there will be a better biodiversity in the forest area than the desert area, because most organisms can thrive in such an environment, because the desert is very very harsher. So if I see any serious term, I'll just explain. So just go through. I don't see anything serious here. I'll just move on. But if you see something that catches your eye and a thing you don't understand, you can draw my attention. Then I will talk to you about that. So it's just talking about interrelation between organisms in such habitat. So I've talked about ecological succession. So when it reaches forest, we call something a climax community. When we are talking about that, I will mention that when we reach a forest, it becomes a climax community whereby we have the canopy, larger trees, smaller trees, then we can. So when the community doesn't change, remember we have light chains over there, you have the grasses, then shrubs will come, trees will come. It will reach a point that the land become a forest. Then when it can become a forest, it doesn't change much. It will be the same trees, and you go there. Once you enter a cocoa farm, what happens? Beneath it, you see only the leaves over there, no other plant grows. But when you enter the forest, there will be larger trees, smaller trees, then it goes that way. So we call it the canopy. The larger ones we see outside, then inside it we have some lower plants over there. When they reach that point, the environment doesn't change that much. Then you see that the community has reached what we call climax. So we call that a climax community. Remember, we have the pioneer community, those that will start the ecosystem, or let me say the environment. They are the pioneers. Then as we move down, we have the climax community. So we talk about desert, we talk about the forest community. We also have what we refer to as the freshwater bodies. So now we are moving to the aquatic habitat. So freshwater is the habitat that doesn't have salt, or it doesn't have salt, or has a relatively lower salt content in such water. Fresh does not mean that it's very very clean. It's talking about salt content. Yeah. So these are the rivers, lakes, ponds, streams. They are so named because of their low salt concentration. So their salt is relatively lower compared to the seawater, which has a higher amount of salt. So we got something riparian zones, which is the interface between aquatic and terrestrial environments in freshwater bodies. So that is where, when you go to the sea, we see at the bank there's a point whereby when the waves turn in, it will cover a part of land. Then later it will drain off into the sea. So normally you will see some crabs will be there at the seashore. So at a point in time, water covers that place. So sometimes we even call it very good. It's even called intertidal zones. That's the place in between the sea and the seashore where water do flow up to when the tide or the waves blow. So that's called the riparian zones. So normally some crabs will stay there and some other organisms when the wind blows they will come just feed, then later they just get back to keep themselves safe. So that is what at least something that you are supposed to know over there. So normally you will see some sea banks or water banks and they are planted over there. The vegetation there also check erosion so that these waste will not erode into the land. So that's why normally people do keep plants around the banks of rivers and the rest. If you keep it so bare, any waste can drain inside. But whether you have what we call it a range over there whereby you raise a structure that is very fine, or when you have a lot of trees there or grass there, this grass will pick up the debris or sediment so that they don't erode into the water bodies. So naturally on river bodies you have that, but on the sea hardly do you see that because of the large coast or shore of sand. So then we have the Arctic tundra that is not found here in our continent, but at least in the Arctic zones, the polar regions, they have this Arctic tundra. So it's a habitat, it's a cold, treeless biome. So this is a biome whereby if very cold, no trees can survive such area. They are found in high latitude, that is at the polar regions of the globe. So because I'm the permafrost, so normally we will see these snows over there. So it's like walking over there is like walking in your freezer. However, you have a lot of this frost or frozen ice over there. So that is the permafrost we talk about, and it covers the type of the topsoil to the point that even the sea or the water bodies become frozen. That animal life and plant life can even walk on such place. So that's the kind of environment that we see normally in the western areas. So over there, most organisms cannot stay over there. Remember last time we talked about the fauna and the flora. So the fauna are animal life and the flora is plant life. So at least that is one key term we've talked about before. So to be able to stay in the Arctic tundra, you should be an organism that have adaptation to conserve heat, or you'll be able to overcome the coldness of such an environment. Then we have the mangroves. Remember, we have trees that we call. Okay, let me talk about the cover. Okay, mangroves first. So these are example of habitat that at least we are just exposing ourselves to. So mangroves are unique coastal ecosystems. So they are found around the coastal areas. And remember, based on that, we have trees that we call them the red mangrove and the white mangrove, based on the color of their leaves and flowers. So mangroves are unique coastal ecosystems found in tropical and subtropical regions. So they are served to create a conducive grounds or nursery habitat for various fish species as well as some marine organisms. So it's like a place in between a swampy area with a lot of water and let me say this mud or swampy areas prior to getting to a sea. So it's like a zone over there, and they said that it serves as a nursery or habitat for various fish species as well as some marine organisms. So marine talks about the deep sea. So it's like maybe a water body very closer to the sea. So it's not into the deep sea, but like on the banks or shores of the sea where we have these swampy areas and water over there. That's what we call the mangroves. So they can have a lot of aquatic life, some from the marine, some from freshwater, and they can live over there. So now look here, many mangrove ecosystem also act as buffer zones against storms, tsunamis, and tidal surges. So when we say buffer talks about something that brings changes or try to balance something. So buffer is like balancing or trying to stabilize something over there. So looking at how these mangroves look like, they try to buffer so that when they rain there, it can't move that much against it. So they try to stabilize storms, tsunamis, and tidal surges because as the water flow over there is like more of a swampy area. So as the water flows from the sea going to the banks, this will serve like a buffer or try to block the larger waves or pressure from the sea waves. So they try to normalize things around such area. And organisms that live in that place should also be adapted to high salinity, that's amount of salt in the water. The reason is as the tidal changes, so as the more of the sea wind blows, you see that more salt will be coming, so it will make the mangrove area saltier. But if the tide doesn't blow and the natural water there, at least it will reduce the salinity. So organisms there, they can live in brackish water, that is whereby the salinity is higher, they can thrive there. When it's low, they can thrive there. So such organism, they can live in such a quickly fluctuating saline environment. Then we can talk of the coral reefs, then the mountains. Let me check how many we have left. Then we just go to, okay, we have just few left. And so if I see any important thing, I'll just run over. These are things that you can read and you can easily understand. Now we know mountains, mountainous areas. So it could be a pile of rocks that are more, or it could be just natural land over there. But normally we have rocks hidden inside most of these mountains. So we have wide range of and zonation. So remember the mountain, as you move on, different organisms can occupy different altitude or height. When you go to the organism will be at the base, some will be in the middle area, some will be in the steeper side, some will also be in crevices. So that's the zonation of a mountain based on the altitude. So we say that the concept of altitudinal, so the height that you are zonation, is prominent as mountain ecosystems exhibit distinct vegetation zones. So there are some plants that will be at the base, some will be along the stretch, some also be at the apex or at the top of it. So I remember you learn about cyclonic rainfall. Mountainous areas, it normally rains. That's why in Asante Mountain, if someone has stayed around Asante Mountain or in the eastern region where the mountains are, it normally rains over there. Well, in the rain season, if you don't take care in Mount Pond, almost every day it can rain because of the mountainous area and the cyclonic rainfall that can come, and even the relief rainfall. Relief is from trees, so it's dominant over there, and cyclonic as the wind hits against the, how do you call it, the mountain, it can refer back, then form clouds, then rains can come back. So normally it rains in such areas, and organisms there are very fertile, or they have abundant supply of resources, so they do well over there. And erosion can also occur if there are no trees or shrubs around the slope of the mountain. Remember, all the topsoil will drain down into the valley. That is why people normally like farming in the valley areas, because when it rains, a lot of topsoil are there, sediment just go there, so it's very rich and fertile inside the valley. But along the stretch, erosion will clear most of the nutrients or topsoil when it is not having vegetation. Then we have the glacier habitat, and this is characterized by wide areas, expanse of ice and snow. So with extreme cold, so this just look like the Arctic zones, but the Arctic is a little bit more, let me say, icier or colder than these areas. So the glacier habitat are wide range of ice and snow with extreme cold temperatures and little vegetation cover. So that is another related zone to the Arctic tundra. So when this water melts or the ice melts, it will serve as water to support these specialized plant and animals over there. So once it becomes more of an ice, it restricts their growth and their survival. But when they melt down, at least they become a little bit okay in such an environment. Now wetland. So when you hear wet and land, that talks are more closely related to the rainforest or areas that is normally rain. So wetlands can be viewed as bridge between terrestrial and aquatic habitat. So it's like a swampy area that we have over there. So water is there mixed with the, what do you call it, the water mixed with the land or the terrestrial. So they are swampy muddy areas, and they are called the wetlands. So the key is that such places, we know guys that normally do well there, people might try to grow rice over there, Some can have some other plants that normally maybe sugar cane plants that do in such areas or wetlands. They do that for them. Sometimes when the pond or river is about to also dry, it can turn also into a wetland, or normally they are around such banks of water. So these are example of ecological, or let me say biomes or ecosystems or habitat in our ecosystem that we can be talking about. So these are some examples. So next time when we meet, you look at the interdependency of organisms in various ecological habitats. When we take a forest, we look at how organisms there interrelate. So remember, ecology is the study of the relationship. So we are now about to do the ecological study, whereby we look at the relationship between the organisms in their environment. And we will dive deeper into this when we meet, God willing, Tuesday. Sorry, the time is up. If there are some questions, you can ask, freely ask questions. If not, in the next 2 or 3 minutes, we'll just end the lesson. So kindly read through all those notes. If I'm supposed to read through all of them, to take a lot of time, but I know once you look through, you'll get a better understanding of all these things. If you have a question, you can raise up your hand. I will come to your aid. Yeah, a hand is up. Kindly ask a question. Emilia Krasi, your hand is up. Emilia, you can talk or mute your microphone. Your mic is muted, or mute it and talk. If it wasn't unintentional. Yeah, what I'm showing you is the same thing that I sent to you. Remember, we have the learner material. So this was, and the learner material has a lot of things. So normally I will take the most important part. Some point I add it. Some things you will not see, but I think here most of these things were just from the learner material. So you can use the one that you can download from the curriculumresources.edu.gh, or what I have prepared as a study material for you. So they are all in the PDF. All of them are in the documents I sent to you. So go to the Google Classroom platform or the WhatsApp page. If you don't have it, maybe later I can share with you there. Natalia, okay, I see you. Any other question or contribution, you can come on board. All right. So thank you very much. So keep them very very well. So those are the documents personally I'll be using in addition to other documents that I have. But at least this was just taken from the learner material, and sometimes I do add some information when it is very very deficient. All right, thank you for being with us for tonight. I'm sure you read and you get a lot of understanding. God willing, on Tuesday we will talk about the interrelation between organisms in their ecosystem. So let's try and we have less than 3 weeks. Let me say 3 weeks. A week like 3 weeks like tomorrow, and I'm sure we are opening school, and we haven't done that much to finish the first semester. And I've been telling you, once school resumes, we are writing exams. So please make sure you study all that we have been doing. And if you join us very late, subscribe to the YouTube channel, watch the video, study. If later you have a question, you can ask on the channel, or you can ask me personally in the group page. Perhaps your friends can even answer you, or if there's a need for me to come in, I will do so at my earliest convenience. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day and the week ahead of us. Bye bye to you. Flyboy, I see you, Natalia. Have a nice day. Good night to you.